I talked to Kate Rhodes and her husband at a party around the solstice, and she was trying to encourage me to go back to the writer's workshop. Kate writes crime fiction, and so I'm going to outline, it's going to be windy, I'm going to outline a modern day, a plot for a modern day crime fiction novel that somebody who's interested in these things might want to write, but it will need a lot of research. These things always do. And this was triggered by this Air India crash investigation. So this plane was bound for Gatwick. So British air accident investigators were involved. And for some reason they took a very long time to come out with a report. Perhaps because conditions in India were less than ideal for an investigation like this. So in this novel there's some sort of nuclear scientist or some government official somewhere in the Middle East or the East who has information about nuclear weapons development in some country, and how that country got hold of weapons materials and things, and he decides to get on a plane and fly to England and ask for asylum, and he's hoping that the British government will take him seriously and investigate, or at least provide him some kind of safe paddock to live in. And so he books himself a flight, and he has to travel under his real name because he's not part of some criminal organization, so he has to supply his passport information. At least the name has to match the name on his passport when he buys the ticket, and he does all that, but the email goes wrong, goes missing, and then he gets the correct email address. He put his seat number and everything on the flight booking, and so he doesn't know what happened to the itinerary. So he calls the help desk. He goes on the online system and sends an email, fills out the request form saying where's my ticket, and he doesn't get a reply, so he gets very nervous, but he tries the next day after still getting no reply, or getting a reply saying, oh, but we sent you the email, but with no receipt or anything like that. So he says, I didn't receive the email, and he gets no reply, and then he says, well, please can you send it again, and he still gets no reply, so he phones the airline, but all of their support lines work through WhatsApp, and so when he connects, they say, oh, we've we've sent you a WhatsApp message if you respond to that. So you can take two forks. I don't know anything about what happens when somebody sets up a WhatsApp account. I do know when I tried that WhatsApp insists on first of all, it tries to get you to open your call log so that you can see so that they can download every call you've made. And then you can get around that though, although it doesn't tell you how, but you can refuse that and still load the app. But then when you try and call a number, it won't let you dial any number until it's seen your contacts list on your phone. So maybe he does that and it gets sent to WhatsApp, and then I don't know, you have to find out how Pegasus, NSO group Pegasus works, but that thing has access to everything. And I heard a video the other day of somebody in the German government basically saying, if you even suspect that your phone has got malware on it, buy a new phone. And if I did that, I'd be buying a new phone every week. So perhaps I don't know what happens, I don't know how, but it pretty much, you can look up a list of who NSO group Pegasus software has ended up in the hands of in the Middle East. So I'm not interested in the crime part. I'm more interested in the fact of why can't the airline help desk provide a receipt? Why can't it provide a signed ticket of some kind saying this email was delivered to your email provider at this time, and here's the receipt, so that if you go to your email provider, you can go on a web page there, put in the receipt and say, what happened to this email? Did it arrive? And then what happened? What did I do with it? Did I delete it without looking at it? And did I delete it permanently without looking at it? That isn't impossible. That's pretty easy. Or it should be. So anyway, his itinerary has gone into the hands of somebody, he doesn't know who, and he gets on Air India flight 171, was it? And it crashes. But they deduce that after this accident investigation, they deduce that the pilot or the first officer went mad or didn't know what he was doing, and he cut the fuel off on takeoff. He pulled the knob and shut down one engine, and then a few seconds later he pulled the other knob, shut down the other engine, and he had no idea that he'd done that, because he said, when the captain said, why did you shut the fuel off? He said, I didn't. And that's all on the data recorder. And the novel is could be quite long, because you could go into problems at Boeing, big problems with confidence in air travel and confidence of airlines in Boeing aircraft, big dependence on air travel for the economy, and all the pressures on Boeing to keep the fleet in the air. This book is enormous, and probably should, or you'd lose your readers if you tried to do it all. But you could set up all of these instances in the first novel, and in the second you could bring in more of the sub-stories about the guy who worked at Boeing but who got gaslit and left his job and ended up getting interviewed by Al Jazeera, and the other guy who worked at Boeing in North Carolina on 787s and blew the whistle about the bad practices and ended up shooting himself in the head in a car park the day before he was due to give a testimony. And you could go on and you could look into all of the personal trauma involved in all of that. And you could have even a whole thing about how the investigation was compromised at the political level. First of all, to hush it up, but underneath that there was a second level compromise by one of the national security agencies who had been involved in an incriminating way in what had happened, who wanted it hushed up for a different reason. And all of these different groups are semi-aware of each other in some cases, and there's all of this politics going on, and you can look into the corporate structure and the governance structure and the air accident investigation structure. Lots and lots of material, and you don't need to make anything up. You just put a thing at the beginning of the book saying this is a fictional account and any resemblance to persons living or deceased is accidental. And you won't sell a single fucking copy of it.